Jimmy Pacquiao walked quietly into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, holding a folded citation slip in his hand as though it might crumble if he gripped it too tightly. It was a small matter, nothing dramatic, just a minor traffic violation from a few days earlier. But the weight of being somewhere unfamiliar, in front of people he didn't know, settled in his chest as he stepped forward. He kept his posture respectful, eyes steady but humble, trying not to draw any attention. At this point, nobody realized who he was, and that suited him perfectly. He wasn't there for special treatment. He simply wanted to handle the situation properly. The courtroom buzzed with the usual mix of murmurs, footsteps, and the shuffling of paperwork. Jimmy took a slow breath. He had been in far bigger places, in front of far larger crowds, yet this simple municipal court felt strangely overwhelming. There was something about the sincerity of the environment, the way everyone waited for their turn, that made him want to handle the moment with complete respect. When the clerk called his name, he walked up to the stand, offering a small, polite nod. Judge Frank Caprio looked up with the warm, welcoming expression he was known for. His tone carried kindness rather than judgment. "Good morning," the judge said. "How are you today?" Jimmy managed a soft smile. "Good morning, Your Honor. I'm doing well. Thank you." Judge Caprio nodded, flipping through the papers in front of him. "Let's see what brings you here." Jimmy felt his heartbeat quicken, though he did his best not to show it. This was just a misunderstanding over a brief moment of questionable parking, but it still mattered to him to handle things properly. He respected rules, and he respected people who enforced them. As the judge scanned the citation, the courtroom audience paid little attention. Just another case. Just another young man standing before the bench. No one whispered. No one stared. To them, he was nobody special yet. Just a polite figure handling his business quietly. But moments like this have a way of shifting unexpectedly. And in this courtroom, on this particular morning, something remarkable was about to happen. Audience hook. But when Judge Caprio learned who was standing before him, the entire courtroom went silent. What seemed like an ordinary traffic case was moments away from becoming a story that none of the people would forget. A moment filled with surprise, admiration, and a shift in the room's energy. Judge Frank Caprio adjusted his glasses and looked at the citation again, then back at the young man standing before him. His tone remained gentle, the same tone he used with everyone who came into his courtroom. Nothing in his demeanor hinted at what this moment would eventually turn into. For now, it was simply a judge trying to understand the details of a minor case. "All right, Jimmy," Judge Caprio began, speaking slowly and clearly. "Why don't you tell me what happened that day? I want to hear it in your own words." Jimmy nodded respectfully. "Yes, Your Honor. I was running a little late to an appointment, and the parking area was full. I stopped for a moment near the curb, just long enough to check if a spot was opening up. I didn't realize it could be considered a violation. As soon as I noticed the signage, I moved. But unfortunately, the officer had already taken note. He spoke calmly, never defensive, never dismissive. His voice carried sincerity, and his explanation was delivered with humility. There was no arrogance in his tone, no irritation, just a young man accepting responsibility and explaining a simple misunderstanding. Judge Caprio saw that immediately. "I see," the judge replied. "So you weren't trying to intentionally break any rule?" "No, sir," Jimmy answered gently. "I respect the law. I just made a mistake." Judge Caprio leaned back slightly, studying him with interest. "Well, you're very polite. Not everyone comes in here with such a respectful attitude." Jimmy lowered his head modestly. "My parents taught me to always show respect, Your Honor, especially when I'm the one at fault." The judge smiled at that, appreciating the tone of the response. He liked genuine people, and something about this young man felt refreshingly sincere. "Where are you from originally?" Judge Caprio asked, casually shifting the conversation. Jimule hesitated a moment, choosing his words with care. "I grew up in the Philippines, sir. But I've spent time in different places because of family responsibilities and opportunities." The judge caught the pause. "Family responsibilities?" he repeated, curious. "Yes, Your Honor," Jimule said softly. "My family has always been active in many things. So I learned early on to be disciplined and respectful." Judge Caprio nodded, tapping a finger lightly on his desk. "You carry yourself differently than most young people I see here. Very composed. Very humble." Jimule didn't respond right away. He simply offered a faint, appreciative smile. "Thank you, sir. I try my best." The courtroom audience, though not yet fully invested, began to take subtle notice. Something about this exchange felt calmer, warmer, more meaningful than a typical parking violation case. The judge looked at him again, this time more thoughtfully. "What do you do for work or school?" he asked. "I'm involved in a few things," Jimule replied. "Mostly training, learning, staying disciplined. I'm still growing, still trying to find my path." Judge Caprio nodded approvingly. "Well, that's good. It's important for young people to stay focused. And it's nice to meet someone as respectful as you." A peaceful silence hovered for a moment, and the atmosphere softened. There was a quiet dignity in the way Jimule spoke. And the judge could sense something unique about him, something unspoken. Engagement break. Have you ever met someone who impressed you with just their humility? Comment YES if you believe respect always wins. Judge Caprio didn't know it yet, but he was speaking to someone whose life carried stories far beyond this courtroom. And very soon, those stories would begin to unfold in a way that surprised everyone watching. Judge Frank Caprio leaned forward slightly, sensing there was more to the young man standing before him than a simple parking misunderstanding. Something in Jimule's calm voice, the quiet steadiness in his posture, hinted at a deeper story. The judge had met thousands of people over the years, students, workers, single parents, immigrants, veterans, but rarely did anyone carry such quiet humility at such a young age. He felt compelled to know more. So he shifted the conversation gently, hoping to learn the truth behind the respectful young man in front of him. "Tell me a little about yourself, Jimule," Judge Caprio said kindly. "Where you grew up, what life has been like for you, and what you're aiming for. You speak with maturity. That usually comes from experiences, sometimes from challenges people don't immediately see." The judge waited patiently. He never forced people to reveal more than they wished, but he sensed Jimule might share something meaningful if given the chance. The courtroom quieted, curiosity rising softly in the background as they listened. Jimule took a moment before speaking, lowering his eyes briefly as though gathering pieces of memories. "Your Honor," he began gently, "I grew up in the Philippines. My childhood was different from what people might expect. I was raised with strong values, discipline, respect, responsibility. My parents worked very hard to teach us that no matter what we had, we should always stay grounded." His tone was sincere, not defensive, not rehearsed. The room felt warmer as he spoke, his honesty drawing everyone silently closer to him. He continued, "Life wasn't always simple. There were good days and there were stressful days. My family had a lot of public attention because of my father's career. People assumed that everything came easy, but they didn't always see the sacrifices, the expectations, or the pressure that came along with it. I learned early on that fame doesn't make someone better than others. It just raises the need to be even more humble." His voice carried a softness that echoed through the courtroom, shifting the energy in the space. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. impressed not only with the words but with the maturity in how they were delivered. He had met many individuals connected to high-profile families. Not all carried themselves with such grace. "Those are remarkable values," the judge said warmly. "Not everyone in your position would have listened to those lessons. Many young people would have gone the opposite way. Yet you stand here with such humility. That says a lot about your upbringing." The audience members listened attentively, drawn to every word. Jimuel offered a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, sir. My father always told me that true strength is not in showing power, but in showing respect. I always admired how hard he worked, how much he endured, and how he treated people with kindness even when life was difficult. Growing up, I never wanted to rely on his name or expect anything from his achievements. I wanted to earn my own place in life, even if that meant starting from the smallest responsibilities." He spoke with a calm pride that carried no trace of entitlement. The judge found himself deeply moved. "That's a rare perspective," he said gently. "Many kids with famous parents struggle to build their own identity. Some try too hard to separate from their families, while others hide behind a reputation. You seem to have found a balance respecting your parents' legacy while standing as your own person. That's admirable, Jimuel. Truly admirable." The courtroom grew quieter, every person sensing that something special was unfolding right before them. Jimuel nodded. "I'm still learning, Your Honor, still figuring out who I want to become. But I know I want to follow values that matter: discipline, humility, and the courage to stay grounded. Life can change quickly, but character should stay steady. That's what I believe." His words were soft yet powerful, leaving an emotional weight lingering in the air. No one expected this depth from what had begun as a simple traffic citation. The moment felt meaningful, almost profound. And as the judge listened, he began realizing that the young man before him carried far more history and far more heart than anyone in the room had imagined. Judge Frank Caprio shifted slightly in his chair, still studying the young man before him with growing curiosity. There was something familiar about the calm tone, the respectful posture, and the quiet discipline in Jimuel's presence. For a moment, the judge's eyes narrowed thoughtfully, as if he were trying to match an unfinished memory with the face standing in front of him. Because even though Jimuel had not mentioned any family names, something about him carried the unmistakable aura of someone raised with purpose, structure, and values. The judge leaned forward, feeling an unexpected question tug at him. "Jimuel," he said gently, "you mentioned your father taught you a great deal about respect and humility. You spoke with admiration, the kind someone expresses toward a man who overcame difficult challenges. Something about that makes me wonder. Is your father someone the world might know?" The courtroom grew quiet, curiosity spreading slowly in the air. People shifted in their seats, their attention sharpening, sensing something significant was about to surface. Jimuel hesitated for the first time since the hearing began. His eyes lowered briefly, not out of embarrassment, but out of humility. When he answered, his voice remained soft. "Your Honor, I didn't want to mention it because I didn't want it to influence anything here. I'm here as myself, but yes, my father is someone many people know. He's Manny Pacquiao." The words were simple, delivered without pride or expectations, yet the impact was immediate. A wave of whispers rippled through the courtroom, spreading from one row to the next. "That's Manny Pacquiao's son?" Someone whispered loudly enough that several people turned. "Is that really him?" murmured another. Heads lifted. Eyes widened. A few people leaned forward as if they needed a closer look to believe it. Even the clerk paused, blinking in surprise, her hand frozen above the paperwork in front of her. It was the type of moment that shifted the atmosphere instantly, not because of fame alone, but because of the unexpectedness of it. Judge Caprio raised his eyebrows, both surprised and intrigued. "Manny Pacquiao?" he repeated. "The world champion? The senator? The man who rose from poverty to global success?" His tone carried astonishment, but also warmth. Jamil nodded with that same humble composure, the same softness that had carried through every word he'd spoken. He did not puff his chest, did not smile proudly. If anything, he appeared even more grounded. "Yes, Your Honor," Jamil replied quietly. "But I didn't mention it because I never want to use his name to make anything easier for me. He taught us to stand on our own and never expect special treatment. I wanted this moment to be handled as fairly as everyone else's." His words carried sincerity so genuine that the room felt it instantly. The whispers softened. People began seeing him not as a celebrity son, but as a young man who meant every word he had said. Judge Caprio let out a gentle breath, impressed in a way he seldom was. "Well," he said slowly, "I must admit I didn't expect that. But I appreciate your honesty. And I appreciate even more that you didn't lead with your father's name. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." The judge's eyes softened as he continued, "Your father is a remarkable man. But standing here today, I'm seeing that his son carries the same humility he's known for." The courtroom watched silently, many touched by the humility displayed before them. Some recorded the moment quietly on their phones. Others simply stared, absorbing the unexpected interaction unfolding before them. Jamil looked around once, then lowered his gaze respectfully again. "I'm just grateful to be treated like anyone else, sir," he said. "And you have been," Judge Caprio assured him. "But now that I know who you are, I'm even more impressed by how little you rely on the fame behind your name." The judge smiled warmly. "Most people would have mentioned it instantly. But you didn't. That kind of humility. It's rare." And in that moment, every person in the courtroom understood that they were witnessing something more meaningful than a traffic hearing. They were witnessing humility, integrity, and character qualities that spoke far louder than any fame ever could. Judge Frank Caprio rested his hands on the bench, still processing the revelation that had just shifted the entire atmosphere of the courtroom. The surprise of learning that the respectful young man standing before him was Manny Pacquiao's son lingered in the air. But what lingered even more deeply was admiration. The judge had always respected Manny Pacquiao not just for his titles, but for his perseverance, generosity, and heart. Now seeing his son display the same humility touched something personal within him. "Jamil," the judge began softly, "your father's story is one many people around the world look up to. He faced hardship that could break a person, yet he rose with dignity and kindness. Seeing the values he passed down to you, it's truly meaningful." His voice carried a sincerity that made the room still. The judge wasn't speaking as a legal authority anymore, but as a man reflecting on the character of another man's son. Jamil bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Your Honor. My father always reminds us that success is nothing without humility. He tells us that life will test us in ways people don't see, but our character should stay strong." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm far from perfect, but I try to live by what he taught us." Judge Caprio nodded slowly, his eyes softening. "Your father came from poverty. I remember learning how he slept on the street sometimes, worked odd jobs, fought bare-knuckle fights just to bring home a little money. People admire him for the champion he became, but I always admired him for the journey that shaped him. And hearing you speak, I imagine he must feel enormous pride not because you're his son, but because you understand what matters." The judge leaned back, his voice growing more reflective. "You know, Jamil, when I was a little boy, my family didn't have much either. My father worked long hours, and my mother did everything she could to make sure we felt supported. I learned early on that respect was something you gave freely, not something you waited to receive. My parents taught us that kindness was a strength, not a weakness. Those lessons shaped my entire life. Jimmy listened attentively, genuinely moved. He understood deeply how upbringing carves values into a person. The judge continued, "Sometimes in this courtroom, I see people who forgot those lessons or never learned them. But then someone like you walks in, someone whose presence reminds me that humility still exists, even in a world filled with pride and ego." A few people in the room wiped their eyes discreetly. The mood had shifted from surprise to emotion, the kind that fills a room quietly and gently. Every person felt the sincerity in the exchange. This wasn't about fame anymore. This was about values, family, and character. Judge Caprio sighed softly. "Your father once said something that stayed with me. He said, 'Don't make excuses. Make improvements.' When I look at you, I see a young man who's genuinely trying to improve himself, not through shortcuts, not through privilege, but through responsibility. That tells me everything about the kind of man you're becoming." Jimmy's voice was soft when he responded. "That means a lot, Your Honor. My father always tells us to live with purpose. He says that achievement without humility is empty, and that respect should always guide our actions. I'm grateful for everything he taught us, and I'm grateful for moments like this, moments that remind me why those lessons matter." The judge's eyes glistened for a moment, though he hid it well. "Your father's legacy is great, but yours will be your own. And today, you've shown that you carry something far more valuable than fame. You carry heart." The courtroom fell absolutely silent. A deep emotional warmth spread across the space, leaving many visibly touched. It wasn't the presence of Manny Pacquiao's son that moved them, it was the undeniable sincerity between a humble young man and a wise judge who saw the goodness in him. For a moment, it felt less like a courtroom and more like a lesson in humanity. And everyone present knew they were witnessing something unforgettable. Two men from different generations, meeting in a moment shaped entirely by respect. Judge Frank Caprio took a slow breath as the emotional moment settled over the courtroom. The atmosphere had shifted from surprise to heartfelt admiration, and now, as he prepared to deliver his decision, he did so with a deeper understanding of the young man standing before him. This was no longer about a simple parking violation or a misunderstanding. It had become a reflection of character, values, and the quiet strength of humility. The judge folded his hands, offering Jimmy a warm, reassuring expression that carried both wisdom and compassion. "Before I give my ruling," Judge Caprio began, "I want you to know something, Jimmy. Sometimes the law is straightforward, but the people who stand before this bench remind me that justice is also about understanding intent, sincerity, and respect. You came here today not expecting anything special. You didn't use your father's name, and you didn't try to avoid responsibility. Instead, you showed humility, and that speaks volumes." His voice resonated gently through the courtroom, and everyone leaned in, sensing that his decision would carry more than just legal weight. Jimmy listened closely, standing still yet visibly moved by the judge's sincerity. He had expected a standard decision, maybe even a brief lecture about caution and responsibility, but certainly nothing as personal as this. The judge continued, "The citation you received could easily be handled with a fine, and under normal circumstances, that would be the end of it. But your attitude today showed maturity beyond your years. It showed that you understand the value of admitting mistakes and learning from them. That is something rare, something meaningful, and something worth acknowledging." The judge paused, allowing his words to settle. The courtroom remained silent as everyone absorbed the meaningful exchange. "So here is my decision," he finally said. "Given the circumstances, the honesty you showed, and the respect you demonstrated, I am dismissing this citation. You deserve the chance to continue growing without this small mistake weighing on you." A soft wave of emotion spread through the room. Some smiled, others nodded, but all recognized the significance of the moment. Jimuel's eyes softened with gratitude as he absorbed the judge's unexpected kindness. "Thank you, Your Honor," Jimuel said softly, his voice carrying genuine appreciation. "I'm very grateful for your understanding." He bowed his head slightly, a gesture that reflected both respect and relief. The judge nodded warmly in return. "You earned this, Jimuel. Remember, humility will take you farther than anything else. Keep carrying yourself the way you did today, and you'll build a life you can be proud of." His words carried a gentle power, touching not just Jimuel but everyone listening. The room felt lighter, warmed by the sincerity of the moment. As the hearing drew to a close, the judge offered one final piece of wisdom. "Life will present you with challenges, Jimuel," he said softly, "but it will also give you opportunities to show the world who you are. Today, you showed integrity, patience, and humility. Those qualities will guide you through far greater trials than a parking citation." The courtroom listened intently. Even those who came for their cases felt lifted by the exchange. Jimuel nodded gratefully, understanding the depth of the moment. He knew this experience would stay with him. When he stepped back from the bench, the room felt transformed. People watched him not as the son of a figure, but as a young man shaping his character. And as Judge Caprio prepared for the next case, a gentle silence filled the room, a reminder that sometimes the smallest moments reveal important truths. When Jimuel Pacquiao stepped out of Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, he expected nothing more than a quiet walk back to the parking lot and a moment to breathe. But the world had other plans. Within minutes, someone who had recorded part of the exchange posted it online, and the clip began spreading faster than anyone imagined. What started as a simple traffic hearing had transformed into a powerful moment of humility, respect, and generational wisdom, and people everywhere felt the impact immediately. The energy surrounding the video was electric, but also deeply emotional. As viewers resonated with the sincerity of the interaction, the clip captured the moment Judge Caprio learned who Jimuel was, the humility in the young man's responses, and the deeply heartfelt reflections the judge shared about values, family, and character. People from different countries, backgrounds, and cultures found inspiration in the unexpected exchange. The sincerity between the wise judge and the respectful young man touched hearts in a way few courtroom videos ever had. Comments poured in with overwhelming positivity, each one highlighting how rare it was to see such genuine humility in someone who could easily rely on fame. Within a few hours, millions of people had watched the clip. Viewers wrote about how refreshing it felt to witness a moment where character mattered more than status. Others reflected on how the judge's words reminded them of their parents or grandparents, especially the way he spoke about values, responsibility, and the true measure of success. Many praised Jimuel for carrying himself with dignity, choosing not to reveal his father's identity until directly asked. That quiet humility became the most celebrated part of the video, drawing admiration from people across social media platforms. As the clip continued to spread, news outlets and content creators began highlighting it as an inspirational moment. The story wasn't framed around fame, nor about celebrity privilege, it was framed around respect. The headlines emphasized the judge's compassion and the young man's character. Interviews, reaction videos, and commentary began appearing everywhere, each focusing on how meaningful it was to see a famous athlete's son showing such grounded behavior. The message resonated widely, becoming a reminder of the importance of staying humble regardless of background. One comment that quickly rose to the top read, "This is proof that real greatness is built at home." Manny Pacquiao didn't only raise a champion in the ring, he raised a champion in life. Another viewer wrote, "Judge Caprio always sees the heart first." But today, the heart he saw belonged to someone who could have acted. Entitled but didn't. That's why this moment touched me so deeply. The blend of admiration for both the judge and Jimuel created a unique wave of positivity online. People began sharing their own stories of encounters with humility, whether from teachers, mentors, elders, or strangers who influenced their lives with quiet kindness. Many reflected on how rare it was to see a viral moment that inspired rather than divided. Families watched it together, some parents using it as a teaching moment for their children, explaining how respect can open doors far more meaningful than any privilege. The comment sections became a space filled with gratitude, encouragement, and reflection. Even fans of Manny Pacquiao felt emotional seeing his son carry the same values the world admired in the boxing legend. They wrote messages about how proud the famous champion must feel seeing his son treated not as a celebrity, but as a young man who earned respect through character alone. The clip became more than entertainment. It became a statement about humility, maturity, and the power of kindness. And through it all, one theme echoed consistently. True greatness is rooted in how you treat others. The exchange between Judge Caprio and Jimuel stood as a reminder that titles fade, fame shifts, and achievements come and go, but humility remains timeless. As the video continued inspiring millions around the world, a call to action appeared again and again beneath the post, echoing the message people felt in their hearts. Final call to action. If you believe true greatness comes from humility, type humble in the comments and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this.